My name is Allison Dodge. I am the Arsenic and Radiochemistry Compliance Officer here at the state at the Department of Health. And a little bit about my role before I get too far into it is arsenic and radiochemistry are both what we call chronic contaminants. And chronic contaminants are those contaminants that have health effects that show up after long-term increased exposure. So their paths to compliance are usually long-term, and because of that, systems are public noticing for long-term. So I've kind of become the public notice expert, and one of the biggest public notices that happens annually that every system has to do is the Consumer Confidence Report, CCR. I don't know, I'm not sure if we've ever done a real proper Consumer Confidence Report training. So that's what I'm here to do as well as give some updates. The EPA released a revised Consumer Confidence Report rule with some changes. So I'm given heads up on those changes, what the application might look like differently when you get your links on April 1st, in addition to our basic trainings. And I just want to thank you all for being here, for taking time out of your day, maybe out of your lunch hour to be here and attend this training. I thank you in advance for the grace that you're going to give me because this is my first webinar. So if we have any technical issues, we'll deal with those as it comes. But I hope that we've set ourselves up for success. I'm doing a live presentation sharing through Microsoft Teams. So each attendee is able to flip through the slides if you are clicking buttons. If you're not clicking buttons, you'll see the slides as I move through them, and you can always come back to live view if you've accidentally clicked a forward button. But again, housekeeping, we're recording this session. Please keep your microphones muted, and then we'll save questions and answers for the end. You can enter your questions into the chat, or at the end of our presentation, you can use the raise your hand tool to get in line for questions at the very end. So a few of the topics and questions that I hope to answer in today's presentation are as follows. I want to explain what is the Consumer Confidence Report, why are Consumer Confidence Reports important, what is a system's responsibility when it comes to Consumer Confidence Reports, what changes are coming to the 2025 CCRs. I'll stop here. When I'm talking 2025 CCRs, 2025 comes out in April 2026. So we're always talking about the year previous, the full calendar year of data previous to this one. So what changes are coming to the 2025 CCRs? And then what changes are coming to the 2026 CCRs that we'll see in April of 2027 and beyond so that we can be prepared. Before I get too deep into it, I wanted just a reminder of the drinking water protection mission to protect the public health in the use and consumption of water within the state of Minnesota. Part of this mission involves public education, including the Consumer Confidence Report. Here's a summary of what we do in drinking water protection as a section. The CCR, and I'll go in between calling it the CCR and the Consumer Confidence Reports, but the Consumer Confidence Report falls under our first little tab, implement the Safe Drinking Water Act in Minnesota. The CCR is part of EPA rule, which I'll get into. So it falls under that bullet point. And it also falls under our training bullet point. I would add city clerks and other city staff to that tab as well when it comes to the Consumer Confidence Report. But let's dive in. What is the Consumer Confidence Report? Where does it come from? Why do we have it? What is it? It comes from EPA rule. If you want to know the full intricacies of it, it's in the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 141, Subpart O, has all of the different rules, what we put in the consumer conference reports, and why. Um, in summary, this is where it comes from and the requirements that go with it. And then we, as the state of Minnesota, implement that rule. So what is the Consumer Conference Report? They are water quality reports that are shared with consumers annually. These reports include information on where drinking water comes from, what's in it, and how consumers can help protect it. I have shared the City of Egan's 2024 Consumer Conference Report on here because I think they're a great example. Um, when you get your Consumer Conference Report links and go through the whole process, you'll be able to download a copy of the report, and it comes in this Department of Health developed template. But cities are absolutely free to take that template and put it on their letterhead, add whatever useful information that they think might be helpful for their community. For example, the City of Egan has this nice infographic about the treatment that they have within their system, which helps explain to citizens how their water is being treated in a nice visual format. Within the Consumer Conference Report are a couple of different things. We've got the big bulk of it are the tables with all of the data from the last 365 days of water quality testing results. It includes all analytes that were detected, and if analytes were sampled for and not detected, we'll go up to the last 5 years of data if there's none in 2025. And so if this application is looking at previous to 2025 data, they will include these dates to show here's where these results were coming from on what days they were sampled. And then another big chunk of the Consumer Conference Report is public noticing about a drinking water violation. I've included the City of Inver Grove Heights as a page from their Consumer Conference Report. They have a radium exceedance that they're using the Consumer Conference Report to public notice about. And so they've got all of the required information that they have to have for that public notice, but they've also added some helpful photos of their water treatment facility. They've also added some details about the steps the city has taken and the impacts on consumer water, so that a lot of frequently asked questions about this violation can be answered on this page, which is great. Why are consumer conference reports important? Why are we doing this? Consumers have a right to know what contaminants are in their drinking water. It's part of an EPA right to know initiative. It's an easy way for systems to meet public notice requirements for violations, especially for, and we'll get into all the details of this, but tier 3 violations like monitoring and reporting violations, their public notice aspect is just a little blurb. So the CCR is a great way to tackle those blurbs together and meet the requirements for all those violations in one place. And it's also, again, a great place to add additional information about the content of water conservation, home water softening, health equity, and water affordability, other things that as a system you might get questions on. You can absolutely use the CCR as that reference if you have people asking frequent questions. So what is the Department of Health's responsibility with the CCRs? There's a lot of work that goes into them before they even get to community public water systems. From January to March, we're kind of in the thick of it right now, community compliance staff generate and review the consumer conference reports for all water systems in the state. We review the data tables, the violations that occurred during the calendar year, and make sure that public notice language is manually entered. So in some violation letters that systems get throughout the calendar year, we mention, hey, this blurb is going to be included in your consumer confidence report. And so we go back through the letters we've issued and make sure that if we said we were going to add this language, we do so. And then after water systems start to return their certifications and distributed reports, we review each submission and make sure that they meet the distribution requirements and make sure all the good information is in there. MDH staff are also available to help systems with their submittal if you have any issues with the website or otherwise, and then follow up when due dates are approaching or if a system needs additional materials. And at the very end of this presentation, I will have a big, nice slide of all the people in our department and what analytes they're responsible for. So that might be a good time to take a screenshot of that in case you have questions down the line. But I'll keep my contact info as well as if you have CCR specific questions. And then what is your system's responsibility with the CCR? That would be the annual CCRs will become available to systems on April 1st, 2026, so in just shy of a month here. Unique website links will be sent via email to whomever is listed as the CCR contact in our database. So usually that's a clerk, a city administrator, or responsible party that does the distributing of the consumer confidence report. And if you would like to update that email address, if there's been staff turnover or you're going with a different email provider and all of your emails are changed, you should contact your district engineer to do any contact updates. And I will have a slide following this one with all of their contact information. And then another responsibility is distributing the consumer confidence report according to the required certification form. And this is going to look different from one system to the next. That's why we really recommend using the certification form as a guide for that distribution, using it as instructions for all the different requirements, because that's one of the biggest changes that I'll talk about later on in this presentation is the certification requirements, especially for systems that had a violation in 2025. There might be a little bit more stringent requirements that you have to meet. So using the certification form as your instructions is a good best practice. And then I did this presentation a couple months ago, and I got a good question about how many CCRs you have to remain available for public access. And I looked it up, and the answer to that is 3 years. So if you use a website to share your consumer confidence report, you have to have the last 3 years of reports available. And then here's that district engineer slide. If you're interested in changing your contact information for the consumer confidence report, you can absolutely reach out to them. I'll leave it up for a couple extra seconds in case anybody wants to take a photo. Cool. We'll also share these slides at the end, so just in case you need it. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of CCR training, how to do CCR stuff. This is a screenshot of the email that goes out April 1st that has the unique website links to your consumer confidence reports. Now, this email goes out to, again, that consumer confidence report contact. It goes out to the owner/responsible party if it's a smaller system. And also, I believe it goes out to whomever gets sample bottles, whoever email is attached to sample bottle mailing. So that could be utilities director, water superintendent, or otherwise. And it's a good best practice to check your junk mail and spam because this does look like I promise this is a legit email. So if it goes to your spam inbox, this is what you're looking for. Now this link, the highlighted first bullet point, is the same year after year after year. So if you are interested in bookmarking that page so that you can revisit it year after year in case you lose this email, in case for whatever reason you want to be able to access it quickly during this time, you can absolutely bookmark the page. And if you're interested in learning how to do that, different browsers are different if you use Microsoft Edge versus Safari or otherwise. Um, you can absolutely reach out and I will send you some instructions on how to bookmark it. But it's the same link over and over and over again. So when you click this link, you'll be taken to this first page, which is where you will insert all of, the first step is to insert all of your contact information. So, and this contact information is plugged into the top paragraph of the Consumer Confidence Report. So this would be whomever you would want readers of the Consumer Confidence Report to reach out to if they have questions about it. And there's a place to put contact name, contact title, phone, and email appear. If you leave it blank, it does show up in that paragraph still as insert email here. So it'll be clear that something was missed if it's left blank. Then, oh, I meant to add an animation to this. Sorry. If you scroll down on the web page, there's a couple of other sections before we get to step 2. There's a languages section. So if there's a portion of your population that speaks a language other than English, you can select those languages, and then the CCR application will add this sentence in that language to the top of the report, so that those people that speak those languages can have access to this information as well. And then there's this section called additional information. This is a really great little checkbox if you're interested in adding that additional information that you might find helpful for your citizens to your report. There's stuff about how to read these tables, how to reduce backflow at cross connections, stuff about home water treatment. I've highlighted a couple on the next slide here, but this is the place on the website where you would do that. So you check the boxes that you want to include in the report, and then when you download it, it'll automatically be added to you. There's also a link for the library of optional text where you can see all of the different text options that you can add to the CCR. I got the fade out. I didn't have a fade in for that, but I had the fade out. Okay. So here's a couple of examples of those additional information. I always have to remind myself of this year after year looking at the Consumer Confidence Report is what is this highest result and average section of each table. So that might be helpful if you get questions on that. There's some good pros and cons of home water softening, what might be the advantages and disadvantages of installing a home water softening system. And then home water treatment, some good things about treatment other than home water softening. Again, these are completely optional. They're not required to be in your CCR, but if you get frequent questions about them, or you think that it might be helpful for your system, you can absolutely add them. So now we'll scroll down to number 2, which is where we will download our Consumer Confidence Report. When you download this file, it will go to your browser's downloads folder. So that's where you'll be able to find it and pull it up. If you need help locating those, again, different browsers are different. I use Safari and Edge and Chrome sometimes, so it all goes to different places. So if you need help locating those, you can absolutely let me know. So you'll download the CCR. You can optional to add information to it, add photos to it. It's in a nice Word document format, which is flexible for adding photos or changing, adding letterhead or company or city color schemes. all that good stuff. But that is totally optional. The template that you download has all the required stuff in it and is in a format that is easily legible. So it is completely optional to do those changes. And then you're required to distribute the consumer confidence report to customers by July 1st. So that's kind of a twofold requirement. Number one is clicking this certification form. This is what you'll click to pull up all of the requirements of that distribution. And then you'll also fill that out once you've done the distribution to say how you did it, what dates you did it. And it's best practice to fill out this certification form as soon as possible. Like you're sending out the mailers today, fill out the certification form tomorrow, as soon as you have all the information that's necessary. So I wanted to walk through a copy of a consumer confidence report just to really show you what content is in this. So we have the City of Elysian's 2024 Drinking Water Report. We have our first section, which is just an introduction to this report. We've got the contact information that was plugged into the first page, how to read these data tables and make sense of them. We've got some definitions for frequently used acronyms. We love acronyms at the Department of Health, so we explain a few of those on this page. Then we start to get into really the meat of the report, these data tables. Under the data tables might be some of those public notice language that are required to be a part of the report. So you'll find the analyte specific public notice language under the table for that analyte. So for example, the combined radium public notice language is under the combined radium table. Got some more good tables, some more public notice language, talking about unregulated substances and emerging contaminants, explaining the extra monitoring that the system might have done and the results that come with that. And then some more details about your drinking water sources, where the water comes from. There's a nice chunk of a page about lead in drinking water, answers some good frequently asked questions. And then we'll talk about this later, but there is a new blurb about the service line material inventory that will be on that first, under the where you enter your contact information. You'll also enter some stuff about service line material inventory, and that will be plugged and chugged into this slide here, or into this paragraph. So here's our certification form. We've downloaded the CCR, we've reviewed the information, we've put it on our city letterhead and color scheme if we wanted to, and now we're going to complete the certification form. We're going to make sure that we meet the requirements of this. So we'll click this button. It'll take you to the certification form that looks like this. It's going to look different from system to system, but here's just an example of it. You will upload a copy of your distributed notice here. This is also where you'll upload a copy if you are such a small system and your certification allows you to just post a QR code saying that the CCR is available. This is where you'll upload that as well. Throughout the next couple of months here, April through June, we'll continue to send emails, reminders about the due dates because this is due July 1st. Certification and distribution is due July 1st. So if you're looking for emails, again, check your spam and junk folders, especially about a week after submittal, just in case we reach out and say, hey, there was something missing. We need you to go back into the application and add this. So we've downloaded our CCR, we've uploaded it and certified that we've distributed it. Now, if I am a citizen, I can go into the CCR lookup and I can look up my city's consumer confidence report. And this is what it looks like from that end. You can type in your city name, supplier name, or public water system ID into the search bar, search, and it'll pull up all of the consumer confidence reports that we have on file. I think we started using this application in like 2016, 2017. The one thing I'll note on this page is that the file names that you upload are public information. So use your discretion on what you title the Consumer Confidence Report file that you upload when you certify. If you are uploading a water bill as proof of certification, be sure to redact any non-public information. So a summary here about some important dates. April 1st, 2026 is when 2025 CCRs become available. The emails will be sent out with the unique links, and it's open season, and you can start taking a look at the CCR, reviewing it, and distributing it. And then by July 1st, 2026, that distribution and certification is due. I've got a couple of best practices, things to remember going forward. Again, using that certification page as instructions is going to set you up for success and make sure that you meet all of the distribution requirements. Again, submitting your certification form as soon as the system distributes the CCR is also best practice. It can get lost in the shuffle and get forgotten about, so it's best practice just to do it now. You can bookmark the unique link for your system's consumer confidence report, so you don't have to keep going back to an email, searching for an email. You can just click the bookmark in your browser if you so choose. And again, proofreading the consumer confidence report before distribution. There's a ton of review that goes into the CCRs before it even gets to public water systems, but it is good practice to review the CCR, and especially with water superintendent or otherwise, people that work with this water and might answer some good questions about the content. Cool. That is it for our training. We'll circle back to questions after our next section here, but I want to move on to some changes that are coming to consumer confidence reports. There are some changes coming for this CCR season, and there's even more changes coming to our next CCR season. So this isn't the last time you'll see me. We'll have, where I think we're going to do this webinar at least one more time with this presentation, and then we'll have an updated presentation probably in the fall and spring 2027. So here are the big changes coming this year. The first biggest one is the certification requirements for systems that public notice in the Consumer Confidence Report. So if you work with a system that received a maximum contaminant level violation during the year, or received a monitoring and reporting violation during the year, the certification requirements are going to be a little different. I wanted to kind of quick walk through the types of violations I'm talking about at a very surface level. Maximum contaminant level violations are when levels of a regulated contaminant are above the EPA's maximum level. You'll receive a letter and public notice materials sent from the Department of Health. If it's a chronic contaminant, there will be an ongoing public notice, which will be included in the Consumer Confidence Report, and we will manually add that public notice into the CCR for systems. So all you got to do is just double check that it's in there. And this is small text, but this is all of the required public notice language for maximum contaminant level violations. This is an example of an arsenic violation. Then the other big type of violation is a monitoring and reporting violation. This is when a sample result is not available for a compliance period for whatever reason. The sample wasn't collected at all. The sample got to the lab, but it was too warm, too cold, and they weren't able to accept it. and then the compliance period has lapsed. It's just when a sample result is not available for that period. Again, a letter will be sent by the Department of Health with the language that we're going to include in your consumer confidence report. And then systems can feel free to add additional language to provide context for the violation. Um, any details that you might find helpful for frequently asked questions. And again, this is manually put in by Department of Health into your CCR. And then this is the required text. We're required to monitor your drinking water for specific contaminants on a regular basis. Results are not available during this compliance period. Therefore, we cannot be sure of the quality of your drinking water during that time. That's just standard language from the EPA. So again, only if your system has received one of these violations, these are going to be the certification requirements that your system will have to meet. So not all systems are going to have to meet these, but some that received a violation will. There will have to be some form of direct delivery. That can be a hard copy or an electronic copy. It can be a URL that leads to the consumer conference report in a water bill. The only thing I'll say about that is it has to be a direct URL. So if I type it into my computer, it takes me straight to the consumer conference report. I don't have to click two other buttons to get there. It takes me directly there. And there has to be some sort of indirect delivery. This can be posting it in a public place, posting it on a website or social media, and I'll get into some specific examples later on, but this is a brief overview of the new requirements. There's a multilingual requirement. If there's a portion of your system that speaks a language other than English, you'll have to make that consumer conference report available in the other language as well. And then if your consecutive system, so if your system sells water to another water system, you'll have to provide them the consumer conference report public notice as well. So let's dive into hard copy delivery. Hard copy delivery could be, some examples are handing out copies of the consumer conference report to every customer. If you're a small system and you have a homeowners association, it can be done there. You can deliver it door to door. You can mail it. You can mail a copy with water bills that are already going out. If you've already got some form of mail going out that quarter, whether it's a newsletter or a water bill going out to all bill paying customers, you can add it to that. Or you could just mail it alone. These are examples of hard copy delivery, and deciding what form of distribution your system should do is kind of a balance of cost and work time. What is most effective for your team? But these are just some examples of hard copy. And then here's some examples of electronic delivery. It can be a mailed notification that the consumer conference report is available via direct URL. You can drop a postcard and water bills that go out for the quarter or the newsletter. You can add a tiny URL or a QR code to a water bill. You can send, if you have all of your bill paying customers email, you can email the direct URL to bill paying customers. You can email the CCR as an attachment or in the body of a message to bill paying customers. And again, direct URL means if I click that link, I go straight to the consumer confidence report. I don't have to click other buttons. So this slide and the slide before, these are examples of the direct form of notification. So you only have to do one of these examples. Then here are some examples of additional methods. We have to do direct and we have to do indirect. Here's an example, some examples of the indirect additional methods. You can put the CCR in the newspaper. I know several systems already do this. You can add it to a community board, or you can post it on social media. These are a good couple of examples of that. So that was a lot of information. I'm going to break it down in an example public water system. The city of Oz, my made-up city, has incurred several violations during 2025. They've received 2 TOC alkalinity monitoring and reporting violations, and they also have an ongoing arsenic MCL, maximum contaminant level violation. So they're going to have to meet these new requirements. The system downloads their consumer confidence report, makes sure all the public notice language is in it that the Department of Health said it was going to. To meet the direct delivery requirement, the system included a direct link to the consumer confidence report on the city's website. They put that link in May's water bills. And then to meet the indirect delivery requirement, the system posted the full report on the bulletin board at City Hall next to the PO boxes, and they also shared it on Facebook. So that's how they met all the requirements. In this situation, they don't have to meet the multilingual requirement or the consecutive system requirement, but here are examples of direct and indirect delivery. The next change I want to talk about is service line inventory information. This is a literal screen grab from what the web page will look like when you're opening up the CCR link that we send. There will be sections here for inputting good information about service line inventory and the number of service lines in your system that will get plugged into a paragraph. So last year, a new paragraph was added to the end of consumer confidence reports, but it required manual entry and it was all the way at the end of the document. So we decided this year that contact info will be requested by the website before you even download it, and then it'll plug it into the paragraph for you. So all of the requirements will be met before you even download the consumer confidence report. And then this is an example of that paragraph. System has completed and submitted our service line materials inventory. It's available here. Here's a website you can go to. Here's a contact information. And then here's how we got this information. And here's how many service lines of all the different materials that we have. Another change, this is coming in 2027 to 2026 CCRs. So this is a really big heads up that if your system has incurred any significant deficiencies, that there might be language included in consumer confidence reports about those. If a sanitary survey was completed and resulted in the identification of a significant deficiency, systems may notice required language inserted into their CCR by MDH. Adding additional language might be required if the corrective action plan has not been shared with MDH staff. Please check your downloaded CCRs for this paragraph, not this year. You'll see these slides again when this becomes a requirement starting in with the 2026 CCRs. And if the water system received a treatment technique violation because of this deficiency, that will also be mentioned in the paragraph. Here's an example of that text. Our system was issued a significant deficiency for X on X date. Our system has or has not completed all the required public or corrective actions. Our system is doing this to correct this significant deficiency by X date. And then finally, there are new PFAS data tables in the consumer confidence reports. PFAS was already being reported in consumer confidence reports in the UCMR section of the report, but now they have their own section since it's now becoming a regulated contaminant. So you'll notice that if your water system had a detect of PFOA or PFOS, they will be in this new table. So just keep an eye out for that. And then on our horizon coming in 2026, the new CCR rule, it will be in effect for 2026 CCRs, which will become available in April 2027. There will be a new summary section. So this will be a list of violations that occurred during the year and where to find public notices in the document. There will be a new section at the very top of the CCR about here's what violations occurred, here's where to find that information. And then systems with populations over 10,000 will now need to do a semi-annual release. This again will start in 2027, so that'll be an October 2027 occurrence. So if your system is over 10,000, you'll need to redistribute the consumer conference report from the previous year in October, and it'll look almost identical to the previous CCR that was distributed, but it'll have any updates on violations or any new UCMR data that occurred in the first half of the year. And again, we're still working out what this is going to look like, so stay tuned for further details on this. We'll have more presentations hopefully 365 days in advance of this becoming a thing. So you'll see some emails and invites from me probably in October, November of this year to talk about this. So here's our final flow chart, a summary of the due dates, what is required. April 1st, 2026, the 2025 consumer confidence reports are made available via email. Systems will then have 90 days to fill out all the required fields, download the CCR, distribute it according to the requirements on the certification page, and then fill out that certification page and upload a copy of the distributed report. And by July 1st, all CCR distribution and certification must be complete to avoid a consumer confidence report violation. So this is our final big scope, big overhead view of our requirements. And then, like I said, here are all of the community compliance contacts. You can scan that QR code to find our contact webpage, but you can also take a photo of this. If you have questions about specific contaminants, you can reach out to these individuals. But other than that, that is it for me.